In the heart of northern Michigan, where winter lingers far longer than it should, there lay a secluded cabin in the woods. It had been passed down through generations in the Weber family, a refuge from the world where they could escape the chaos of urban life. This year, Daniel Weber had decided to spend a month in there, hoping the isolation would give him time to finish his new novel and to reclaim some semblance of peace. Little did he know the peace he sought was about to be shattered. Daniel arrived at the cabin late in the afternoon, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. The cabin itself was a modest structure built with dark timber and adorned with a sloping roof barely peeked out from beneath the snow. The place had always been cozy, with a fireplace that roared with warmth and comfort. As he unpacked his things, Daniel felt a sense of containment, a stark contrast to the tension he had left behind the city. The first few days were serene. Daniel woke up to the quiet of the forest, spent his days writing, sitting before the fire in the evening. The only sound were the crackling of the fire and the distant calls of birds. He even took long walks through the woods, the crunch of snow underfoot a smoothing rhythm. But as the days wore on, the tranquility began to wane, replaced by an unsettling feeling he couldn't quite place. One evening, as he was returning from a walk, Daniel noticed something peculiar. The snow was disturbed around the cabin, tracks that seemed to be appear and disappear as if someone or something had been pacing around his home. He shrugged it off, attributing it to an animal. Still, the sensation of being watched lingered, a nagging presence that he couldn't shake. That night, the wind howled with an intensity that rattled the windows. As Daniel laid in the bed, he heard a faint scratching sound outside his window, like nails dragging against the wood. He pulled the cover over his head, convincing himself it was just the wind playing tricks. But the scratching persisted, growing louder, more insistent. Finally, he mustered the courage to get up and check. But when he looked outside, there was nothing there. The next day, Daniel decided to investigate the tracks more closely. He followed them deeper into the forest, where the trees grew denser and the snow was untouched by any other prints. The tracks seemed to lead him toward a grove of ancient pines. At the center of the grove stood a tree unlike the others, its bark twisted and darkened as if scared by some unknown force. At its base, Daniel found a small wooden totem covered with crowed primitive figures. He recognized it from the folklore he had read about the Wendigo, a spirit of insatiable hunger and malevolence. Unease settled in his stomach. He had heard of the Wendigo in tales and legends, an entity born of starvation and evil, said to drive man mad and consume their flesh. It was nothing more than a story to him, a relic of superstition, but the totem felt ominous, and the track that led to it only deepened his anxiety. That evening, as the sky turned a bruised shade of purple and the cold seeped into every corner of the cabin, Daniel tried to shake off his unease. He sat by the fire, reading an old folklore books, trying to distract himself. Yet, the scratching sound from the night before have returned, this time accompanied by a low whispering. The voices were unintelligible, like a foreign language that scrapped against his sanity. His nerves were on the edge. Sleep came fitfully, and when he did manage to drift off, he was plagued by nightmares, visions of gaunt, skeletal figures with hollow eyes and mouths stretched into grotesque grins. He would wake up to the sound of his own heart pounding in his chest, the whispers still echoing in his ears. The following day, Daniel felt compelled to go back to the grove. The air was colder, the sky an oppressive grey. He approached the twisted tree with a growing sense of dread. This time he noticed something even more disturbing. The totem was gone. In its place, a crowd pile of sticks and bones, arranged in circles. The tracks around the grove had become more erratic, leading in all directions as if whatever had made them was circling in the area. Hello guys, if you like this kind of videos and want to hear more, consider subscribing to this channel, and also check out other videos on this channel too. Like them, share them. Now, back to the story. Daniel's sense of dread intensified. He hurried back to his cabin, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. But the whispers continued, growing louder and more desperate, as if calling him, begging him to listen to those whispers. Desperation drove Daniel to search for answers. He delved into old journals and letters left by his ancestors, hoping to find something that could explain the horrors he was experiencing. One night, he found an old diary belonged to his great-grandfather. The entries detailed a series of unsettling events that had occurred in this cabin long before Daniel's time. Disappearances, strange noises, and sighting of shadowy figures in the woods. The final entry spoke of a dark presence that had been driving people mad, a hunger that could never be satisfied. As the days passed, the whispers became more coherent. They began to form words, hungry, and come closer, you can't escape. The presence outside seemed to grow bolder, scratching at the windows shaking the walls. Daniel could no longer ignore the reality of the situation. The Wendigo was no mere legend, it was real, and it was hunting him. One night, unable to bear the terror any longer, Daniel barricaded himself inside the cabin. He piled furniture against the door and the windows, hoping to keep the entity at the bay. As he sat in the dim lit light of the fireplace, the whispers turned into screams, filling the cabin with a cacophony of rage and hunger. The wind howled a ferocity that threatened to tear the cabin apart. In the dead of night, there was a loud crash. A window shattered, and the cold air rushed in. Daniel's heart raced as he heard the creature moving through the cabin, its presence palpable even if it was unseen. He grabbed a flashlight and a hunting knife, preparing for the worst. The creature's breath was icy, and its presence seemed to close in around him. Daniel could see its shadows moving along the walls, a skeletal figure with eyes that glowed with an malevolent hunger. He fought to keep his composure, his grip on the knife trembling as he prepared for the final confrontation. Suddenly, there was a silence. The whispers ceased, the howls faded, and the cold receded. Daniel, heart pounding, searched the cabin but found nothing. The Wendigo had vanished, leaving behind only the remains of its terror. Exhausted, he slumped to the floor, his mind reeling from the ordeal. The next morning, Daniel awoke to find the cabin eerily quiet. The snow outside had settled, the tracks around the cabin gone as if they had never been there. The totem in the groove was back in its place, untouched and unscathed. It was as though the nightmare had never happened. Daniel left the cabin soon as after, unable to stay any more longer. He returned to the city, but the experience had left an indelible mark on him. He could no longer write, could no longer sleep without the haunting memories of the Wendigo's whispers. The forest had claimed a part of him, and he knew he could never return to the place of isolation. Years later, the cabin was abandoned, its windows dark and its walls silent. The legend of the Wendigo continued to lurk in the whispers of the wind and the shadows of the trees. Those who ventured too close spoke of a lingering presence, a hunger that could never be satisfied, and somewhere in the deep woods the Wendigo waited, its whispers echoing through the dark, dense pine. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel. Enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.